Great, thank you. I will open it here in just a second.
He's also.
Something like that.
Seriously. It's got this on.
There we are.
Roy and Thelma. Thelma's joining us also in on a different computer.
There's some handouts by the door. Some handouts.
Yeah, I think there are handouts there.
I couldn't get you at first. I thought maybe Emerson wasn't there.
No, we're just kind of getting our tech squared away.
Okay, I'm on.
No, the other problem is really, the room is locked.
Oh,
We couldn't get into it, so.
There we go.
There we are.
Beautiful.
I don't know about that. I'm not very good with it, so.
Well, the problem is you get stuck somewhere and. Those people in our. Yeah, enlist the help of the children, or something like that, for their children.
all right. You're good to go.
Good.
I gotta, it's the other next Sunday service.
Right, you would be good.
So there
Yeah.
is a handout.
See,
Again,
No, that's fine, but you may need to change the slide because I've gotta go.
Oh, yeah.
Go to the worship service
Oh,
for
yeah,
next Sunday.
I already.
Then I gave Carolyn Rose obituary.
Oh,
There
good.
was one in the paper this morning too.
Wonderful.
So I cut it out.
Wonderful.
She's got both of them. Thank you.
So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here, for sure.
So-
And this microphone is what you need to project.
Yeah.
Now, we'll let you know, but you're gonna go on YouTube.
Would you say?
You're gonna be on YouTube.
I am.
You will. You're drop out midweek.
So when you say I have to, I have to speak towards the mic.
And then we're watching you with the camera.
Okay. I haven't done my hair this morning. John, should we wait any longer or are we? ready?
Oh, no, oh, I think we're behind schedule,
Okay.
Yeah, we are.
like 5 minutes.
I'd like to introduce you to Rebecca Armstrong, who is a volunteer, but obviously a very active volunteer at Redondo Los Niños, because they asked her to do these types of presentations. And probably most of you who lived in the community for a while know that Redondo's been around a long time. But I think its mission, thank you, Billy. I think the mission has changed considerably. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, which really sets you up for the kind of work you're doing? And then we talk to us about it.
Sure. So I actually was a preschool teacher when I started my career. I have cerebral palsy, which affects my motor skills, and so I was really looking for something that would accommodate that as a young professional. Children became my passion in doing so. For a number of reasons. One, that they're not malicious, they're just not educated in how they perceive me. And two, it didn't dawn on me until a family whose child was enrolled in my school said, "We're so happy to have you in our life because you teach our children about differences in people." The flip side of that coin is that I reached a point where I didn't feel like families might think their children are safe with me, because I couldn't run after children necessarily. The other piece is that cerebral palsy and aging are not a kind combination. So I went back to school and got my master's in counseling and then started working with hospitalized children. As a result of my being hospitalized a great deal as a child, having orthopedic surgeries, I was interested to see what was available for support for children and families. Fast forward, I spent 6 years at UNMH and then 25 years at Presbyterian, developing a program called the Child Life Program, which serves families and their patients diagnostically, normalizing behaviors while they are hospitalized. When I began at Press, there was a child who was there for 4 years. 4 years. And at that point, and another child for 3, I approached administration and said, I don't have the proper tools to help assist these children. And then again, moving forward, the big arches that you see is called Rachel's Courtyard, and I got that built. That's actually a huge indoor play area and outdoor play area for children on the 6th floor where their medical care is adjacent to the play area.
You could see that right out the window.
Right. I was taking children who were tethered to IV poles and oxygen tanks down to the 1st floor. And it was like, okay, let's throw some pebbles at some bushes. Oh, look, it's a banner day. Someone's digging a hole. None of that was appropriate as far as I was concerned. When I approached them, they said, what do you want to do about it? And I said, fundraise and we'll make the money. So we fundraised for 5 years and to the tune of $1.5 million. We got Rachel's Courtyard. When I retired, I was at such a loss as to how to remain purposeful. And my son said to me, you know, you loved preschool and you should go back to that. I had a donation that I wanted to give to a preschool and put on those top of my list. And when I went in to deliver this, it was a big piece of art from my playroom that I had owned personally. And I just fell in love with it. I just was like, this is where I'm. It is sort of advertised as a preschool, but it's not in totality a preschool. What it is, which is so amazing to me, is it is a counseling, there is a counseling component. These families have gone through domestic violence and they are homeless. When these children are enrolled, many of them are coming from shelters every morning to the school. So there is counseling for the families. There is a gentleman who's so awesome. He works with the adults to help get jobs. He does mock interviews. He helps them with resumes. We give them the clothing to do the interviews in. So there is housing, there is counseling for the domestic violence, there's counseling for the drug abuse, there is counseling for being homeless. There is the support to help you find a job. So it's much bigger than what the Ivy holds to think about Cuidando los Niños with a couple of kids coming through. I'm going into my 3rd year of I'm halfway through my 3rd year of volunteering, and I gotta tell you, it's been really an eye-opener for me. And to put it just in a way that you can think of and just be sort of startled is that for every homeless person you see on the street, there might be a child as part of that experience. I had never really thought about homeless children before I got involved with Cuidando los Niños. So that was a real eye-opener for me. The school is predominantly Spanish speaking. And so I also really love that because I've been on Duolingo, which is an app for language. And I've been on that for 3 years now, another thing that I took up when I retired. And so I love being in the classroom where I'm hearing a lot of Spanish. Let's see what the next slide is, please. This was sent to me last night, so I apologize if I'm not entirely organized. So the mission of it is to end the child homelessness in Albuquerque. And this has been going on since the 1980s, which is phenomenal. The services are, I'm gonna just go down to the bottom, you can read it as I speak. Services are at no cost to the families we serve. And as we are supporting and funding by grants, individuals, corporate donors, and community partners. So this is, and I'd be happy to email this to anyone if they want to write down their emails to me. So it's fascinating to me to watch children come into the school coming out of homelessness and a shelter. They don't have clothing. So a lot of times you know that a child is coming in as a new admit because they come in pajamas. And often the pajamas are footy pajamas because they don't even have shoes. And what is really compelling is watching how these children, through the time periods of adjusting to Fernando, they become properly clothed. They become properly capable of interacting with people. I'm gonna have you fast forward, sir. And it's a picture of one little boy, got him, right, perfect. So this little guy is one of 7. And my mission with him has been to teach him how to eat, okay? Think about being homeless. You're in a car, you're on the streets. It's not like you have a napkin and a plate of food and silverware. So this little guy is just, he's got his face down in his plate and he's using his hands. My concern is going off to public school. What is acceptable in the home is one thing, and I make no judgment. But what's acceptable in the public school system is a whole nother kettle of fish. And I don't want these children to be bullied and ostracized. So I sit next to this little guy every time I'm there. I'm there 3 days a week. And I think he's so tolerant of me because he'll get his little face down like this. And I just go like this. And I say, no, this is how we do it. You take your fork and you eat your food properly, okay? He has gotten better and better about it. And now we have another new child who does the same thing. So one teacher goes with this guy and I go with another guy. I figured this guy could use a break from me. Now I'm with the other little person. That is another piece to Cuidando that I so value. You know, I was happily raised in a home where education and manners and morals and values were put in front of me every day. And in particular, table manners. So I bring that. When I started, the children didn't use napkins and I was, oh, it's like this. So I instituted napkins into the program. Again, that doesn't seem like a big deal, but in the big picture, it could be for these little guys. So they have napkins, they have their silverware, they have dishes, they have cups with milk. And they get a full breakfast with a fruit, a hearty meal, and juice and milk. And then they have their lunch meal, which, let me tell you, this is one of the reasons I had to volunteer there. When I came in to donate that toy, the painting, a big platter of enchiladas whipped by me. I was like, where are they going with that? It was the meals for the classrooms. They don't eat peanut butter and jelly. They eat meals that are seasoned. They are eating meals that you would happily serve guests in your home. I mean, they are also taught very much how to enjoy food. Not only that they have food, but how to enjoy the food. So they get a lunch meal, and then after nap time, they get a snack. So it's my first day. Yes, I have loads of experience, but never in this setting. And so I'm sitting there like this. I hate to say I had favorites, but I had favorites, because there was this one little boy that could actually carry on conversations. Because he had been at the preschool since he was an infant, and he was shy of going into kindergarten. So he would say things to me like, so, Miss Becca, why can't you pick up your feet? You know, it was like, he was observant and he was curious, and I loved sitting next to him because it was an opportunity to have these one-on-ones with him that were very cerebral. So he's sitting next to me, he's teaching me because I'm like this with my hands, and he says, you need to put your hands in your lap. I've been told. And then, the silverware, the place settings were put out, and the silverware was on the table, and he looked at me, and I must have looked at a loss. He said, we don't start eating until everyone has been served. Amazing. You know, these are little homeless children who are being taught these life skills that some children in middle-class families aren't even being taught, you know? Okay, so I've got that down. And thereafter, they are not allowed to clear their place until it's pretty much established that everyone is done. There are a few people a few of the students that take longer to eat, but for the most part, you don't clear until everyone is done. And they do get seconds, and if there's more food, they will even get thirds, because sometimes, unfortunately, these are the only meals his children are going to get. He is one of 7 children, so we make sure that he gets plenty to eat while he's at the school, in case he's not getting a full meal day to day at home. You can always tell on Monday mornings that it's Monday morning. It's not that we step all the way back, but we are stepping back and having to exercise the rules again. They're sort of one for all a bit. But that mealtime was very much impressive to me, because it's what we do in the real world, you know, how we present ourselves. Thereafter, what I was immensely impressed with was how these children are taught to respect one another, and then how to be accountable for their behaviors in the classroom. One wouldn't think that that's something you necessarily would dive into with preschool children, but it is very much a part of the day-to-day curriculum. They really instill in these children the ability to recognize how to interact with one another respectfully, and then thereafter, if you don't, that you are accountable to that behavior that was wrong. It's really amazing thereafter to watch how these children, upon admit, if you will, or being enrolled, admission, that they slowly transition from these, and forgive me, but wild creatures to these really civilized, capable children. It's just, it's something to see and marvel at, and to be so grateful for. I am so grateful that I am part of this, because to watch these children transition in this fashion is really quite amazing. So let's see what the next slide is. Thank you. So here I am there are 3 different classrooms. There is an infant classroom, so admission starts off with infants. Because I worked in the hospital settings, I was very much interested in their infant room. They would have infants that were discharged from hospitals and then brought to Quadando, because these families were being discharged homeless. Now, yes, we can't discharge them without a safe place. So they'll be discharged perhaps to a hotel, and then they are then hooked up with Quidando. There was an infant that was discharged from the neonatal intensive care unit to this school. I mean, that's phenomenal to me. And that our school is equipped to be able to do that is also quite phenomenal. So not so much the infant classroom, but the pre-K and then the closer to going to kindergarten, those two classrooms I will fluctuate in. They graduate from the pre-K classroom to the, you're gonna go to kindergarten the following year classroom. So I'm with this one classroom and the little boy that I favored, who talked to me in conversation, they're gonna transition to the next classroom. They're being told this, I'm sitting across the room from him, so he says, can she go with us? And I said, well, I didn't say, oh no, first, both the teachers were like, oh no. And part of it is, I love doing curriculum. I did it for years, I did it at Presbyterian. So this is where we were celebrating the 4th of July. And I had brought in all of the props to do the activities with the children. And these are the older children who will then graduate in the fall to go into kindergarten. But most of them in this photograph had been in the prior classroom. So children can be there, infancy through until they're going into the elementary school. That's amazing to me. That continuity of care is phenomenal. And so you might have an infant in the one classroom, a pre-K in the second classroom, and then another child who are all siblings. So think about that, the continuity of care that is offered to an entire family. Really, it's amazing. Okay, if we can move to the next slide.
Mary, you asked about the meaning of Quidando, and Rebecca told me it's care for the child.
Yeah. So the toolbar is sort of interrupting the photo, which is fine, but this is in the play area, and this is the out of doors, and this is something else that, as an educator and a devoted preschool teacher for all of those years, was really impressive to me, is that I've described 3 classrooms. Each classroom has a different play area. So they've designed play areas that are developmentally appropriate for each group in the classrooms. I had never seen that before. You think of public school, it's all one playground and the different classrooms go to that one playground. Well, a first grader isn't gonna be able to do the monkey bars. I don't even know if they have monkey bars anymore. But, so.
Too dangerous.
Right. I mean, all the fun things that we did just aren't available. But we love those teeter totters. So that also was extraordinarily impressive to me, was that the 3 different play areas really addressed where these kids were developmentally. And every single day, rain or shine, well, not really belting rain, but we do get them outside because, again, if you think about it, they're living in a shelter or in an apartment, they don't have this kind of play area outdoors to play in. And there's so much that you can teach children through the course of play. So with this little group, every single one of them is Spanish speaking, and it is so delightful to sit and watch them engage with in conversation with one another. And then, let's say I join in, I work with, what are you saying in Spanish and how do you say it in English? You know, So that's a lot of fun, and I really, utilize the concept of them teaching me, because I think they become more invested. And, so I'll say, I don't know what this food means, how do you say this food? And it gets them more involved, because they like that they can do something that I can't. So that being said, look at those little chairs. As a handicapped woman who's 67 years old, I do sit in those chairs. And it's a tough thing to get up out of those chairs. Kids are so much fun about helping me get out of those chairs. I mean, they're just so lovely. So the little guy who doesn't eat as we wish, he'll take off with my stroller and my walker. And I fear that he might have seen some pickpocketing in his life experience, because he can come up and he can just take things out of my pocket and I am completely unaware. Like the teacher will come back and say, is this your phone? Are these your keys? So, but he takes,
Full Dodger.
but when he takes off with my belongings, it's a great teaching tool in of itself, because then the teachers work with him to say, those aren't your things, let's find you something to play with. But thereafter, if he's taken my walker, that I've seen other children say, no, that's, and they'll get it from him. And bring it back. Let's see what the next slide is, please. Stuck on a good time. Okay.
We did move too far.
Yeah,
Lose the menu before you do it.
You went two because you punched it two
Right.
times.
yeah, I mean,
Back it
looks
up.
like this is working again, so.
Back it up.
Yes, menu.
Yeah, close the menu. There. Go back.
So as I mentioned to you before, there is the housing program. You know, when Carol and I spoke on the phone, she said it's really important that we understand where the needs are. So I've shared with you somewhat the population that we're serving: families, housing, counseling, employment. But here's where we get stuck. First and foremost, we're too small. Our classrooms are full and there's a waiting list a mile long. So there's a lot of grant writing, presentations going on to be able to expand the program physically. We are located off of Walter Street, and there's a lot of property there. And it's a very exciting time for Fernando, because we've been working with the city and we have been given permission to work with them and expand the program. But if we go to present day with the clients, if you will, the families that we're working with right now, we can provide them with a roof over their head. We can provide them with clothing. We can provide them with food. I'm bowled over at the food. Farmers donate so much good food for these families. The dilemma is they don't know how to cook. I would love to see in the expansion if the kitchen would be able to be utilized to help families learn how to cook certain foods. Vegetables, how do you cook vegetables? How do you do this? How do you do that? But before you can even teach them how to prepare something, they need to have the equipment. So we provide them with a roof over their head. But we don't have the funding to put a pot and a pan and kitchen utensils in every home. We don't have the funding to put a garbage can necessarily in every kitchen. So I was approached, it was my first year there, and I guess I appeared like I have money trees in my backyard. Because I was approached and a teacher said to me, you know, there is this family who doesn't have a table. Now, good news is the child is in the classroom that I volunteer. And to that mom's credit, that child arrives, she's been given a home, there's 3 children in the family. The child always arrives immaculate. She is dressed beautifully, her hair is combed beautifully. She was Spanish speaking, she's now, you know, bilingual. And so, not that I wouldn't give a table to anybody, I would, but the fact that I knew this family, made it all the more significant to me. So, what again, it demonstrated was, where's this family eating? If they don't have a table to sit at, all the work we've done on table manners, I mean, what then happens? How does that translate into their personal life? Where do these, she's one of 3, 2 older brothers, where do they do their homework? So that's where when Carol said, you know, what is the need? This is where I see some of the really most fundamental need. We get these families to a place of being able to function, to feeling self-respect, to really being able to be productive, but they're limited in how they can be productive because they don't have all the tools. So one day I walked into the school and in the hallway were lined up 40 trash cans, 40 trash cans. And it just made my day. Who would have thought that me seeing a lineup of trash cans would become a day? But it made my day, you know? Silverware. Here I am diligently working with these children to get them to utilize spoons and forks, not knives. That's another thing. The food is on their plates and there might be chicken strips. And I'm walking around with a knife cutting everybody's chicken strips. Because if they're gonna be taught to use their utensils, then they can't be picking up an entire chicken strip. Just, I have my little idiosyncrasies. So I go out in the morning with the knife, at lunchtime with the knife. So it's those things again that are very basic that we might not think of. So when I did a presentation at one time, I discussed the eating and that Monday morning, there was piles of silverware, you know, going to the the dollar store, you can buy plastic silverware so easily. So those are the phenomenal things, because what happens is when families come in and out, there are shelvings with tons of produce and canned goods. There's a room full of diapers and clothing, and then lots of books. We want these children to be, you know, engaged in reading. We do a lot of reading in the curriculum. So we're really trying to address the full picture here. There are buses. We have 2 Cuidando buses, and they do pick up children. We do have children that the families don't have any transportation, and so there are routes where we pick up. The children are picked. The children are picked up and then brought back to the school, and then they're taken home. So that's a whole nother piece that involves funding, because we have these vans, and then we also have a big SUV for things like the shopping. Can you imagine feeding 40 children? It's a lot of groceries. Now, I'm gonna backtrack a little. Before I started here, I had a dream that I was a cook in a preschool. This must have been because I saw those enchiladas going by. So I really wanted to see the kitchen. I wanted to see how this phenomenal woman, Yadira, and I don't call her a cook, I call her a chef, how she prepared these foods. So I asked if I could go in and help one day. And I said, okay, wow, you know, you have big sinks, you have all the dishes. And I said, where's your dishwasher? And she said, we don't have it. So Yadira is washing all of the cookware to prepare the meals. And then all of the plates and the silverware and the spoons, not napkins, the cups by hand, you know? Now, I have no problem pushing up my sleeves and getting to it. So the couple of times I've gone in the kitchen, I say to her, let me just do the dishes. I can do the dishes. Now, the reason being is because of plumbing. It's an old building. What they do have is a big disinfecting unit. So after the dishes are washed, then they're put into this machine where they're disinfected. So I had to work with that, but I still really wanted them to have a dishwasher. Hopefully with the expansion, and there would be a new big kitchen, there would be a dishwasher as well. I do want to also share with you something that came up in my first couple of months there. With let's see what the next slide is. And then I do want to give you time to question. Okay. I will address that after I just share this piece. Nap time, I get down on the floor and I lie down next to the children. And so I rub their back, or I might rub their forehead, or I might rub their arm. And so this one little guy says to me one day, can you just go like this? And he was doing that to me. And what I realized is that these children are in survival mode and don't experience tenderness. They're not, I'm not saying that they aren't feeling loved. There's a difference between tenderness and affection and love. But it made me realize the way he sort of really reached out to me and wanted a certain kind of touch. That while these families are in this state of being, tenderness isn't part of the program. I mean, a shelter, think about a shelter. You're one of many with cots in one room. You know, it's not an environment for tenderness. I refer to myself as the nap whisperer. And so I was absent for a month over the holidays. And when I came back, I was like, oh, thank God, there's your corner. And it has a lot to do with the interaction of tenderness. Also, I think that I am, as they're lying down, I'm face to face with them. So that if they're not entirely sleepy, I can whisper a little bit of conversation. The teachers are also rubbing backs, but they're in a sitting position. They're the professionals. I get away with a lot more because I'm a volunteer, you know? It's like, when we need more forks, I'm the one that will go to the kitchen and load up my basket and my walker with forks, because I don't have to be accountable to what I'm taking. But we need those forks in the classroom, so I'll ask about it later. But that was also very telling to me, was the tenderness. And, so I really love nap time because these children have an opportunity to experience that kind of thing. Aside from the structure of the classroom, which I have shared, is the education of these children. And I have to say, they aren't teachers. They start off as teachers and then they become educators. Think about what I've shared with you thus far. When these children are admitted to the school, they have no ability to focus. They have no idea what it's like necessarily to listen to a book. So in the beginning, these individuals who run the classrooms are teaching them how you behave to learn. And once these kids understand that, then this is what I say, the teachers become educators. So first they're taught, how do you learn? They don't know how to learn because they haven't been in that situation. But once they understand what it's about to learn, then I say the teachers stop teaching and they become educators. So first thing in the morning, there is a circle time, there is the greeting songs, there are books read, and the curriculum is impressive. So there is weekly curriculum, there are activities during the day, and then the children are also, learning their basics, their ABCs, their colors, and all of that. The woman in this photograph, Andrea, she is phenomenal, and she is currently working on her master's degree, and I'm so excited for her. She has been at Cuidando for 12 years. She runs the classroom that's the one just before you go out for kindergarten. So it's just that their classrooms, and please, I encourage you to call. They love to do tours and get a tour of Cuidando because the classrooms are so impressive. And despite this being my 3rd year running, every day, still when I walk in to that classroom, I stand there and I'm impressed. I just take this moment and I look at this classroom and I think, so lucky, because the classrooms are so impressive. The food is impressive, classrooms are impressive, the teachers are impressive. And I'm not saying this because I need to say it, I'm saying it because that's what it is. Let's see sort of what the next present slide is, please. Here is a photograph of a child out in our courtyard, in our play area. One of the things that I did and that I love doing with these children is growing a garden. And we did a lot of me hauling things from Home Depot and planting. And so for these children to then have an opportunity to plant, water, grow, and reap the benefits of their tender care. And I say tender care because they have to be taught how to be tender with plants. But there are photographs of this one child who she really was invested in seeing how this watermelon grew. And every day she would look, every day. And then when it was finally ready to be picked, we had it for lunch, dessert. It just, so that's another big thing is what do we do to enhance the outdoor experience? What do we do to enhance what a family can do to be a family and engage in some really constructive, fun learning experiences? So my garden, I'm so excited to start that up again this year, but we grew, strawberries and watermelon. Sunflowers were amazing, peppers. The kids love peppers, the sweet peppers. And then for the staff, the jalapenos were all. To make sure the staff were taken care of too. So we really do try to embrace everything that one child and a family might need during the course of their early childhood years. Do if you have the time, give a call. The phone numbers and the material that has been left here to get a tour, because I really think that will give you the broader spectrum of what actually exists. It's quite an amazing situation, as I've said over and over again. But I wanted to leave time to see if anyone had any questions. Sure.
I'm interested in any regression from the weekend with being at home and being away from school. Do you have any pushback from the parents who may say something like, we did this and they told us that wasn't allowed or something?
Oh, that's an interesting question. That is a very interesting question, and is actually, your name is?
Mary Johnson.
Mary, it's actually part of the conundrum. It's part of the dilemma that the teachers have with our families. Because what we're doing in the classroom needs to be supported in the home front in order for things to maintain. And sometimes they're just not. So, your question is such a good one, and I can't answer it in totality because I'm not a teacher. So I'm an educator, so I don't have that rapport with families. And when I go back to Sunday, when I go tomorrow, I'm gonna ask that question. I'll let you know. You can share.
It goes a lot farther than Cuidando too.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Through the whole education, system.
But it is, yes, but it is, I mean, circle time on Monday morning, where you sit in a circle and you listen to the story and conversations about what you did over the weekend. That's hard on Monday morning, because they're like little ants in pants, they're all over the place. You know, and I think I also wanna comment, as you refer to the family and regression, that despite all of our hard work, sometimes we're not successful. And sometimes a child will come in, so 4th of July weekend, I'll give us an example, and a child comes in and has birthmarks. Well, that child wasn't properly supervised with the fireworks. It could have been a community setting, but the fact of the matter is that family, adult supervising those children were not doing so properly. And so that's a whole nother piece to it. What is going on in the home? And just because we're super at what we do, it doesn't mean that, like you said, the same thing is being implemented at home. And nor does it mean that the parents are buying into it. You know, and I would have to say that I do know that there have been families that become frustrated with us because they feel as if their children are learning things that, you know, the other children aren't. Because if there's older children that are in public school, you know, this child is learning how to be accountable, how to eat their food, how to be respectful. He's 4 years old, but the 8-year-old doesn't behave the same way.
Maybe
And the
parents don't.
And the parents,
Yeah, because they're taught as children themselves.
right?
That's an interesting question I've been wondering about, is that what is the interaction with the parents? You said there is some, but really for the kids, the main thing is the kids, but the whole thing, I mean, I used to tutor over at Eugene Field, as a matter of fact, probably right next door to you guys, pretty much. And you know, you could, I had successes and failures, right?
Right, right.
And failures, to a large extent, well, all the kids that I tutored really were from less than ideal families, shall we say, and that's a huge, huge part of anything, you know, I mean, if they're not in a good environment, of course, you're trying to get them, but that's a huge part of the whole picture.
It is, and it's a good, what's your name?
Bruce.
Bruce, it's a great question. What we do is a lot of field trips where we invite the families to attend. So the families are observing how we interact with the children. So, for example, in July, we went to the zoo and I was like, oh my goodness. And thank God for the penguins. Tangent in here, thank God for the penguins, because it was nice and cool and. Gosh, let's hang out with the penguins for the rest of the day.
They're behind glass too.
And it's nice and.
So you don't smell it.
Yeah.
In San Francisco, the penguins were right there next to you and it was stinky.
No. It was, but the families were there and it was lovely. And the thing too is that we get to role model. When you do this kind of thing, you make sure that you have water with you. And if you're gonna be there for 4 hours, you make sure that you have snacks with you. So that's a very good question. We really do try to engage the families in different activities. Really fabulous support is the Explorer Museum. They will come and they will set up activities. So it's sort of rotating. It's as if each one of these tables had different activities and they're set up around this room and the parents are invited. And what we do is the timing of it would be when the parent is going to pick up the child. So there's really, I don't want to say there's not an excuse for not participating, but it's a nice segue. You're going to come a little bit earlier, you're going to pick up your child, but you get to do this activity. And then of course, if there's siblings that aren't part of the program, that they get to be a part of the activity as well. So we do utilize community resources, and I'm so impressed with Explorer. They've been wonderful coming in numerous times during the course of the year to set up different activities with the families that you know that we work with. So that's a really good question as well. And you know, they're going to be failures. They're absolutely right. Families will disenroll because they don't want to hear about being accountable. They don't, you know, and I don't find fault in that. It just really emphasizes all the more what their struggles are. They're surviving. Oh, exactly. Exactly. Good questions.
So you mentioned the waiting list. How are the children selected that go into the program? Are there criteria that you look for, or is it personal serve? What is the situation?
That's another good question. I'm gonna have to take notes. No, seriously, and I'm gonna have to get back to you, Carol, and she can share with you. That's a really good question, and again, because I am a volunteer, I'm not entirely sure. Now, certainly, the child that was coming out of the neonatal intensive care unit, that's gonna be a priority. Thank you for that question. What's your name? Jane. Thank you. That's a really good one, the criteria. And your questions, I will address and then email you and she can share this with you. So that's good.
I think, John, you put in the email about the Mackenzie Scott grant that.
Yes, right, yes.
And what so impressed me about that was, well, that you got it, it's a huge grant. I think what I read on the website maybe is that the annual operating expenses are 3.2 million, but this grant they got is for 2 million. And so that expansion is to provide more classrooms, I believe. And to provide those things. But what I started to say was, what really impressed me was, how you all were ranked, or how Cudondo was ranked and, viewed by the people making the decision about the grants, was that how you operate, how Cudondo operates is impressive enough to be, what was in that email, John, 10?
I forgot the number.
Well, it's
Yeah,
like,
but considerable amount.
go back to the email John sent you and read how they were selected one of 10 in the total of the applicants.
Yeah.
That,
She's, and she's very selective, by the way.
yeah,
And you realize that's Microsoft money.
yeah.
It's
That's
all
Bezos
that,
money.
all that money comes from, yeah. And she, of course,
And they saw obviously Cudondo as a well-operated agency doing what their mission is that they say to do. They say they are going to do, so that data is in
I don't know where any other, building in the city gets that kind of money.
There was someone else in the city or at least in the state,
Maybe city.
yeah. But,
So that's very unique. Yeah.
so that's going to open many more doors for you.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. If you would, take one of these and turn it over, and if you wanted to write down your email on a sheet of paper over at the door, then I could just email you the presentation and then the answers to your questions individually. So if that's something you'd like, I'd be happy to do that as well. And I thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
If you know, please put something like Cudondo in the subject line, so we don't put the.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Mary. And then they did give me a few little tchotchkes if you want, little a post-it thing or a cup or some sunglasses for a grandchild. Whatever you like. Thank you so much.
She'd probably like you to take the goodies so she doesn't have to hold them back.
Oh, do I have to?
Any other questions?
I thought we were dismissed.
No, you are, because it's 10 minutes till church.
Yeah, no, I thought you were dismissed as well. Okay.
Oh, you're fine. Thanks for coming.
Class is dismissed.
Goodbye, Roy and Thelma. Oh, I don't know, Scott, one started there. You too.